Moto Dad Podcast, episode number 2. And I am sitting here with Grant Carter of Motorbikes Plus and of many more things in the moto industry. I'm excited for this one. I really am. I've been thinking about this interview for a long time, even before I thought about doing, a Moto Dad podcast, just because of all the cool interactions I've had with you. Let's set the stage real quick with a cracking of the beer.
Excellent.
Moto Dads, we drink beer and we talk about dirt bikes.
Yep, we do. We do.
So let's start by kind of introducing you. Grant, you've raced dirt bikes for a long time.
Yep.
Ridden dirt bikes for a long time.
Yes.
You have a son that's 18 years old now.
Yep.
And has had a long life of riding dirt bikes.
Oh, yes.
So you're a moto dad.
I am.
So, let's start with this. Do you think there are moto dad accolades? Like, is there like a portfolio that you lay out for somebody when you explain, okay, I'm a moto dad. I've done this and this and this.
I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, there's so many different ways of looking at the moto dad. The moto dad in some situations gets a bad rap, a good rap. It's everybody looks at it as different. When moto dads are usually referred to, it's the crazy moto dad. Like the guy that's out there with the air throttles going and everything else. But every single one of these guys or girls, they're doing it because they want their kid not necessarily to be the best, but they love them and they want to see them do awesome, and they think they can do certain things, like whether they think their kid's going to be the next McGrath or they're there every weekend having fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most moto dads, they have that vision of their kid being the next McGrath or Ricky Carmichael or something, but most of them are realistic enough to just say, hey, let's do this until,
It's hard not to.
Right? Oh, it's impossible not to, especially if you're an enthusiast yourself. Like, there's the moto dad that has never ridden a dirt bike, and then there's the moto dad that grew up riding dirt bikes. Yeah. And that's kind of where you usually see the biggest difference. But
I think I always envisioned myself, when I thought about being a moto dad, I thought about the people that I kind of grew up around that I looked up to as a moto. Like, what would I want my dad to be? And, like, I think of, like, the Ziggies of the world.
Yep.
And even Mike Grandal and
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And the guys that I was around that really, they were intense to be around, but not because of their intensity level. They were intense because of what they brought to the table, and then you could tell that they kind of instilled that inspiration into their kids through that just kind of mild demeanor of like they know what's going on.
Yep.
It's that level of knowledge that you feel from somebody that I really looked up to, and I always wanted that, and I think that's kind of maybe a little bit of the justification behind this zpodcast is like, I want to build my portfolio by talking to these moto dads like you,
right?
And like Zig. I would love to have a conversation with Zig, just to really pick his brain about, how do you get that? How do you get that feeling and that kind of passive way of getting a kid inspired, And that's really was my kind of goal. Well, let's start this off. Quick update on Travis, my boy. We haven't been on a bike in a month, and he hasn't asked to ride a dirt bike in a month. He hasn't. I mean, obviously he plays with his toy dirt bikes every single day, but he has not yet come to me and said, "Hey, can we ride?" What? And I'm new at this, right? I'm 3 years into this, and we live in Maine and we live in New England. You grew up in New England.
Oh, yeah.
Grantley grew up in New England. What did you do in the winters with Grantley and even with yourself? Like, what were the winters like for you? Was it a time to put the bikes away, or was it focused on trying to go south?
Kind of depended on where I was in my racing. Like usually it was, last NESC race, and then, the first few years I was racing, last NESC race would be end of October, beginning of November. And I wouldn't touch a bike until a week before the first NESC race in March or beginning of April. And, And then as it got further down, I spent some winters in Florida as I got into the pro class, whatever else. But it was that was more, there was plenty of training going on, but there was plenty of fun going on too. You know, like it's a little bit, it's different now.
What with Grantley? Because you were off and on, kind of serious with him riding, and what were the winters like with him? Did you really just kind of get away from the sport?
I mean, he started when he was about 5, and I'd say until he was like on the 4 to 6 class, then 7 to 8, and then 65. Probably second year on a 65, we had a buddy. I would just would have probably continued to just take the winters off. We do a lot of skiing and snowboarding in our family. That's what I've always done. I love it. And I probably would have continued that. And a buddy of mine whose son used to race, they don't race anymore. He's like, we're going to Weinert's over Christmas. Do you want to go? I'm like, maybe. I mean, like at the time, probably didn't want to spend the money, whatever else. He's like, I'm paying for the whole week. I'm like, well, yeah, we'll go. We went down there. Grantley was probably 9, maybe 10, but 9 or 10, and we went down there and stayed in one of those cabins at Weinert's with one little electric heater on the floor and froze our butts off. Like it was no insulation, freezing cold, but it kind of sucked us in a little bit more. Like I was kind of trying to do the very chill approach. And then, I don't think we did anything else that year. We might have gone down again in like February or so. I can't remember. And then ever since then, we've kind of always had these dreams of doing more each winter. And he'll go down to West Craven for like a week with another family or whatever. I went down with him, did a couple weeks down there a few years ago. And the last couple of years, we haven't done much.
Yeah.
He goes down and maybe does a week. But I'm kind of foolish with that stuff. And I don't, as a moto dad, I say what I'm going to do. And then I get sucked into things here too much, and I don't take the time off. And
that's why I've stopped calling around until I know what I'm going to do. Because you make all these plans in the winter, and then it comes around. Like, I honestly would not, if we hadn't have dedicated so much money to Minios up front,
right,
I wouldn't have gone. Because by the time Minios came around, Travis was already kind of, like, checking out a little bit. He was like, he's
been riding a lot.
We rode a lot this summer. And I've heard, I think Rob Beams did an awesome podcast on the athletes that work through their season, and then they basically, their off season, they're told to get fat. They're told to go home,
fuel up,
eat whatever you want, do not do anything for months.
Yep.
And then when you come back, it's really hard to come back, like at an athletic level. It takes them a few weeks, but when they get back, they're able to surpass where they were.
Yep.
And I think Ken Roxon did a little bit of that going into the outdoors last year, where he took that time off.
Yep.
So I guess, I'm at a point right now where, we may leave Christmas morning for North Carolina to ride dirt bikes, or we may just say, let's not do that. I'm debating.
Yep.
Travis is 6. We've got so much time. I don't want to do that.
No, I get it. I kind of look at it as the whole Christmas time, especially, you went to Minios. So that was 4 weeks ago. Like he's been riding all season long, and I look at this, I've had people invite Grantley to go with them down in North Carolina for Christmas, and I'm just like, he goes down there, rides for a week, but then if he doesn't go down again in February or something, it's like, what was the bother? He might as well just go snowboarding or something else like that, and
exactly
whatever. It's good to go down there and everything, but North Carolina in December usually at night is at freezing at least, and kids are riding in sweatshirt. They're cold in the morning. They don't want to climb out of you're in a camper with nice heat, but when it comes down to it, they walk outside, they're like, this is not that fun. And I mean, that's just me looking at it, but I know how I figure this is how these kids are really looking at it. And their parents are like, well, we're here, you're riding. And that's, that's the difference with kids, though. Some kids, they will ride their dirt bike in any condition, but there's a difference between the kid that's asking to ride and the kid that's being told to ride. So
I think you just answered my question for me.
Yeah, because that's where the sport is now, though. It's if somebody takes a week or two off now in this sport, it's like they feel like they're missing out.
Yeah.
Like this year with us, Grantley was pretty ready going into the season. Went to the first, we never go to the first race. We're usually very chill approach. First race goes to Winchester, but I was busy, so I didn't go. So my wife took him.
Yep.
My wife doesn't go to the races very often for a reason, and that is because every time she goes, I'm talking every time she goes to a race, Grantley ends up getting hurt. It's the weirdest thing. He's spent nights in Maid Med and Barbara Bush. It's the craziest thing. And she's like, I'll take him. She takes him. He rides practice. He does a half a lap of the first moto, crashes out, doesn't ride his bike for 6 weeks.
Oh.
So she's just calling me. She's done. She's done. All year, the rest of this year, she went to the practice track with him once. That's it.
Do you think this is one of the only sports out there like that? Because if you think about it, if you gave that situation to anybody with that would use common sense in this, the two don't have anything to do with each other, really.
Right? Exactly.
They really don't. They could. There could be a little bit of Grantley, thinking, okay, my mom's here, but
I need to be a superstar, but also,
is there something about this sport that does that?
It's tough to say. It's really tough to say. I think more what it is. Oh, see, I silenced everything except for that.
Hey, man, I ruined the last show with the phone ringing. So,
he kind of. I just found out recently that with him, every kid is obviously different, but we have a friend of ours that helps us out quite a bit. If Grantley wanted to race all over the country, this guy would help. He thinks Grantley is great. He's a good friend of mine. He's got the money to do it, and him and Grantley have these meetings once in a while to talk about stuff. And Grantley says he wants to go racing with his dad, that he wants me to be there. And I kind of always looked at it as he didn't care. He doesn't care. He'll go places with good friends of ours and whatever. But he's like, I don't want to go racing. He'll go with his mom, but his mom gets all worked up before we go. He wants to go with his dad, and I'm just like, all right, well, I don't want to go racing this weekend, Dad, because you're not going. And I get it. When I send him to the track, anytime my phone rings or I get a text message, I don't even want to look at it because I'm just like, what's it going to say? That's this sport. It's not like a baseball game where, you could get hurt, obviously, at any sport.
It's
but,
not,
it's a little different, but I don't know why it's like that, but it just, for him, I think it's just he wants Dad there, and if I'm not there, his mindset goes in a different area and just...
It's a comfort level, too.
Yep.
We try... a cool story that I always I heard was Eric Grundle was always a very comfortable rider.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
You grew up around Eric and around Mike. You saw
sure.
You saw Eric grow as a rider. When he got to 80s, his dad brought in JoJo Keller to kind of help coach.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one time in staging, JoJo hit his dirt bike on him. Just hit his dirt bike.
Yep.
So they're lining him up, and Eric's starting to freak out. He's starting to go, where's my dirt bike? What's going on? What, JoJo? And then finally, JoJo grabs his dirt bike, brings it up, puts him on the gate, and Eric pulls a whole shot and goes out and dominates.
Yep.
It was this, this trigger in his brain to upset the comfort level.
Right.
Yep. Because these kids do get into a comfort situation.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We try to do that with TJ, too, a little bit, because this is an uncomfortable sport. It really is. It's intimidating.
For sure.
And we want them to face those challenges more and more. So we'll have my wife bring him to the line, or I'll have one of my best friends bring him to the line. Something different to always kind of. But we keep it pretty light with him, anyways.
Yep. And we used to do that a lot when Grantley was on 50s and 65s. I had some friends or coworkers that would be at the races. They go down to the line with them. I'd go, and it. It worked really well with him then, and now I think it's a little. There's a couple people that would work with him.
Yeah.
As he's getting older, people that he knows really well, but for the most part, he's a pretty. He can be a funny kid, but he's a pretty quiet kid too. Yeah. So he kind of keeps to himself.
But it's that sport again. Have you ever watched Vince Freezy? Have you ever watched him on the line?
Oh, yeah.
He has an incredible regiment of things that he has to do before the gate drops. It's such in his brain. He's very OCD, and I think the sport causes OCD.
Yep.
Like, it caused OCD for me.
And you can tell it helps his mindset because the guy, he doesn't care.
Yep.
He doesn't care who you are.
Doesn't care, yeah.
Doesn't, nope, for sure. Nope.
Used to be fun at MTF. Barsha and those guys, like Davalos, they used to mess with him before the gate would drop, just to kind of take him out of his rhythm, you know, because they knew what that would do to him, on a competitive
Oh, yeah, you hear all
level.
those stories of these guys yelling, J-Law yelling through the start box at Dungey on the other side and stuff like that. And it's, you know, some guys, that's what they feed off of, you know, so it's kind of.
How much, so let's kind of get into this. How did you start riding dirt bikes, and how did it turn into this? How did you turn into a professional, because you were a professional rider, right? You
loose term, but yes.
Let's go with it.
Okay.
Let's go. Take the credits where credits are given. How did you get there, and what were your parents like growing up?
So, like, riding wise, I when I was probably 8 to 10 years old, we had three-wheelers. Mm-hmm. And just rode recreationally. My parents, me, my younger brother, we'd ride, all day on the weekends, both day, like all over the place. Three-wheelers.
And no broken collarbones.
Nope. Couple like broken ankle at one point. Like hit a jump, foot comes back, tire crushes it. But nothing. I was one of those guys that would, when four-wheelers came out, I would argue that no, the three-wheeler's way better, way safer.
Yep.
I was probably 10 years old saying this. I didn't know a damn thing, but. Then, I don't know how old I was, probably 10 or 11 years old. I had the option to get a new dirt bike. We went to this place in Kittery. It was called Kittery Honda or Kittery Cycle. And they had an XR80 on the floor. It was like 1985 or 86. And I could have waited like 3 weeks for the new 87 CR80 to come out. I'm like, I need a dirt bike now. Well, that was a huge mistake. So I rode that XR80 until I was probably 14 or 15 years old. And then I had two of my best friends growing up. They were twins. They both got 1990 YZ125 and a KX125. And I would ride I had like an 84 KX125, just rats I would get just to get on. And one of the twins, he got hurt. He was out for we didn't race yet. But we had tracks everywhere. We rode, when I say every day in the summer, every day. It was every single day we rode. My parents owned a gas station, and the trails would leave from our house, where the house was at the gas station. You could leave out the back. You could do a trip around the whole town, ride all the tracks, and come back around the front of the store. You'd fill up the bikes, and we'd go the other way. And we would do this all day, every day. And when my buddy Pete got hurt, I rode his YZ125 all summer, and all of a sudden that was really changed it for me. And
so let me interject real quick. You said it was a mistake that you left the showroom with an underpowered bike. Do you think that contributed at all to the rider that you are today? Being on an underpowered bike?
Honestly, yes. Riding the trails and stuff, I'd be chasing guys on. I would have that thing to the pin trying to hang with friends, and it would get me hurt.
Yeah.
I went through so many rear wheels on that bike, it would blow your mind. But, just whatever. We took it to the Honda dealer. They fixed it. Came back. And then, and then in 92, Craig Morgridge, which is Zach, that everybody knows as, used to work at Factory Connection for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
He was a mechanic in Supercross and stuff for Jimmy Button at one point. And then in 91, I think it was 91, Buddy Antonez lost his ride, and he went to ride for DGY Yamaha for the last 6 rounds of the outdoors. And I bought his... Zach said it was his race bike. It was probably more like a practice bike, but full motor, everything. And I had no business owning this bike, and I bought it. We went and this was 92. We went and raced at Canaan Lions Club.
Yep.
Did a couple races there, and but I was never told I had to run race fuel in this bike or anything, and I didn't know what cleaning an air filter was. So that's how I met Ziggy. Ziggy had to rebuild my bike for me because this was before he was suspension. He was race service, and did a couple races at Canaan, and then that winter got a brand new 93 YZ 125. And we went right at NESC the next season. Like, I didn't know. My buddy said, you guys should race NESC. So we went, me and my buddies that were twins, we signed up. And that year, I bet we raced every single NESC race, like from the end of March until beginning of November. And
that'll make a man out of you right there.
Yeah, it was a lot. So, like, when the season ended, you wanted to take a break.
Yeah.
Like, I think NESC now, like, they have more weekends off now than they used to, but they still don't have enough.
Yeah.
There's not enough weekends off. Like, I could never commit to that ever again. Like, that's too much.
What was it about that YZ125 that was just so... There's, I started on a steel frame YZ125, and I still, in my garage, my only bike that I will ever race is a YZ125. Yep. I don't... What was it about those YZ125s and how they made such a... I've heard the KTMs are incredible, like... But I've never ridden one because I don't want to ruin myself.
Yeah, I mean, they're all good. Like the YZ now, that's a great bike. Yeah. I mean, I feel that the bike we have is significantly better, but that YZ is a great bike. Yeah. That 93 YZ, I thought it was unbelievable until I got a 94 CR 125, and that's when CR still had motors.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that thing was unbelievable. All of a sudden, I'm hole shotting everything in the B class. I'm like, this bike is ridiculous. Like, it was awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
What? So, I ask you about the underpowered thing. We're going to get into Grantley. We're going to get into, what his kind of progression has been. But at the moment, he's on a 150. Mm-hmm. Yep. He's 18 years old. He's being pressured by buddies to get on 252 4 strokes and,
yep.
The bigger bikes. But I've always had this, like, I love when TJ is underpowered. I loved when I'm underpowered. Like, for me, I ride vet classes, right? And they're all 450s.
Yep.
I go by these guys like they're tied to a tree, and they hate me for it.
Right, yep.
But I love that. What is it about that underpowered? Is it... Because obviously you have to carry your speed. There's a lot more teaching going on. What do you think any of that contributed to where you are with Grantley right now on a 150?
That's kind of why. Like, I've been putting off 4-stroke as long as possible because I tell him, I said, you learn to go fast on this thing, you'll go fast on anything. The 2-stroke, especially the small bore, I mean, obviously the 125 is even a little more work than the 150, but you learn how to go fast on a 125 or 150 2-stroke. Then when you get on a 250F, it's going to come so easy to you. Like, that's it. Just, and I have so many guys that are like, he needs a 250F, and then I have a lot of old school friends that I race with. They're like, you're doing it right. Like, would it still be this way? We may have gotten on one a little sooner, but I mean, Grantley just turned 18. He's probably 5'10" now. Kid only weighs 120 pounds. Like, he weighs nothing. So, small bores, one thing that comes very natural to him, he gets starts. Even on that small bore, he'll somehow open class, big bikes. Somehow this kid is coming around the first turn first. It blows my mind. We practiced starts once since Grantley started riding a bike with a clutch, and that was back on 65s. We practiced starts one day, and when he's on the line, I kind of have to remind him of some things of what his body positioning or whatever, but we don't practice starts. He gets it, so therefore I just leave him alone.
That's awesome.
And it's, he shows up, he got hurt at that race this year at Winchester, first race. Doesn't do another race until the main event. First 2-stroke moto, the 125, 150 all-star race. He comes over the first table leading that class. Full gate, and it's just like...
And that's no joke.
Yeah, like, I get chills. I'm like, this kid, like, well, how does he do it? And after the race, other kids that, he's been racing with since he was a little kid, Austin Capricornitis, which is awesome nationally. He's like, when I saw you go through the first turn, I was like, big surprise, Grantley's lead. Like, he does that. And he kind of... So I don't mess with it. I don't think... He just gets it, so I don't mess with it. And just...
See, I'm a form freak. So for me, like, I'm obsessed with starts. Like, I'm always with TJ working on starts and on form, and obviously whoops. Like, I'm obsessed with, like, just how the body what the body does to a dirt bike, I wouldn't be able to leave Grantley alone. Like, you're doing a good job, because obviously if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right, but Grant, like, I can watch TJ and see that he's on the balls of his feet and he has his elbows up. Like, Grantley, don't watch Grantley's fundamentals. Like, he's smooth, he's gear high, like, gets that stuff, but arches and elbows down, and that's how he goes. And I just try and tell myself, David Villeman made it work. Cianciarulo makes it work, like, with the elbows down, but it's like...
But let's talk about that real quick, because there are guys, because, again, I'm a form freak, right? I won't let TJ ride the bike unless he's riding it the right way.
Yep.
That's
no,
what we
it's
get
smart, though.
That's what we get into arguments about.
Yep.
But then I see kids that smoke everyone all the way up through the ranks, and they look like garbage on a dirt bike, but they can make it work.
Yep.
You just mentioned something, gear high. He knows how to be a gear high.
Yep.
You can take a kid with absolute beautiful fundamentals on a dirt bike, and he has no idea what you're talking about when you say gear high.
No, it's very true.
There are Ronnie Stewart had something cool in our last one where he was talking about all the spokes in a dirt bike, right? And if you only have 4 spokes, your wheel's not going to last. It's not going to make it through the race, right? Yep. So I feel like I'm in that kind of point with TJ where we have these 4 spokes just dominated, but there's like nothing. There's nothing more.
Yep.
And you got to know how to turn that throttle.
Yep.
You've got to know how to twist it.
Yeah, and that's a thing that, I mean, I watch, and I told people over the years, other moto dads and stuff, like, they're like, oh, what can I do? My kid is not going. He's not going. I'm like he's 8 or he's 9. I said, he'll be fine. He gets a little older, and you never know. This kid that's riding in 10th and almost getting lapped will be up front. And I see it happen to a lot of kids, and it's kind of crazy. You know, they get a little older, you know, start hitting puberty, and next thing you know, everything clicks. There's some other kids that Grantley's growing up with that have the fundamentals, like these kids do everything perfect on a bike, and they were riding around in, you know, full gates. They're riding around in 15th to 20th every weekend, and now these kids, I've told their parents over the years, I'm like, I'm telling you, yeah, your younger kid is ripping. I said, but your older one, when he figures it out, that's when it's going to be real, because this kid does everything right on the bike.
That reminds me, I got 2 things I want to say about that. One, we went to that track in Riverside, New Hampshire.
Yep.
Awesome track.
Yep.
I mean, awesome track. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, we haven't made it up there yet, but
there was a kid on an 80, probably riding around in 12th or 13th at a local race. That's slow, right? Yep. You're going slow. But this kid was in the most perfect attack position I've ever seen, right? Ever. So much so that I started videoing him. Like, I started getting video of this kid riding. And I was like, I can't believe how perfect this kid looks on a dirt bike. And after the race, I was walking by his parents. They were all excited because he went out and raced and did well. So, like, you can tell the family's an awesome family. Like, kid got 12th and they're pumped. Like, that's cool.
Right, yep.
And I had to say, like, hey, guys, just want to let you know, like, your kid rides unbelievable. Like, incredible. I was blown away by how he looked on the bike, and they were so appreciative of that. They didn't know who I was. Like, I'm just a guy walking by, but it was still, like, a cool moment where I'll have to dig some footage up of that kid because he was riding unbelievable.
That's very cool.
But also, I think a big question is, how was Grantley as a kid? Like, what was the mentality? Because that's my biggest – it's kind of my biggest, like, learning curve has been is, like, I do get jealous at these kids that are out there getting top 5s in TJ's class. Like, I'm pretty jealous. Like, they're on the podium, and I'm like, man, I wish we could do that. But then I got TJ, who is just, he's just kind of chill. Like, he doesn't. And I think about growing up around guys like Lil Zig, like Aaron. He was that way. Like, he was just
He's still that way. He's still that way.
Yeah, but now the kid can qualify for a national.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, he's always been a great rider. Was never necessarily like the best out there, but him fundamentally very good rider.
So how was Grantley growing up? Did he have these sparks? Did he have what?
I think with him, it's one of those things where I didn't start racing with him until, you know, he could get around the track pretty darn well. So therefore, when we started, and I think it's affected him now to the point, so he was always one of the top 3 kids always, like 50s, 4 to 6, 7 to 8, 65, everything, all the way up through. And so therefore, you know, there were some kids who would show up only once in a while, but I mean, they were faster, you know, but it's consistently going to like New England stuff. He was always one of the top kids. So therefore, as he got older, it was kind of something that he took for granted. Like, why do I have to do the work? Like, I just won. Like, what? Like, and I get it, but he kind of still, what he considers putting the work in now and what Dad considers putting the work in is extremely different. And I just want the kid to do something. And he looks at it as me being hard on him. And I'd say all moto dads are hard on their kids at some point, but what I'm asking him to do is not much at all, because I know his talent level, but I don't think he believes in himself enough. But coming up through, he always did great. Now it's a little different when you show up for a race. You know, you're 16, 17, 18 years old. You're in the B class. He still he shows up at main event, and that 250 B class, I mean, there's fast kids there. And
how did he end up?
Somehow he shows up there, you know, you got 30 kids on the line. He went like 7-5, and then he crashed in the last turn. Flagger wasn't doing their deal. Ended up underneath the kid's bike, got like 36. But, I mean, 5th in a 250B moto on a 150, showing up pretty much your first race of the year.
I watched those motos.
And, like, I mean, you've got Capricornitis, you've
yeah.
got Bryce Shelley, you've got Sebastian Balbuena. Like, I mean, you got some fast kids. And he gets 5th, you know. I'm like, dude, like, that's a great moto. And he's pissed. I'm like, you should be pissed at yourself, because you're the one that told me you were tired and had arm pump before the second lap was over. Yeah. You know, it's like, but, you know, I've kind of given him a mulligan a little bit. You know, he kind of maturing a little later than some kids, didn't start growing until he was like 16 years old. So, you know, like, I look at 18, almost like 16, you know, hopefully, I'm like, dude, let's do this. And if he wants to do it, we'll do it, but I'm not going to make him, because it's too expensive of a sport to make him do it. You know?
Well, you talk about that maturity and that aspect of it. When I was a kid, I raced NESC, 50s, 60s,
Yep.
80s.
Yep.
I quit because I hated it. My dad pushed me. I didn't like it. Like, I didn't care, right? And then, you know, I still continued to ride, got a 125, went out and did my first race on a 125, and I wanted to kill people. Yep. I don't know what it was.
Right.
I never had that before.
Yep.
My friends did that I grew up with.
Some kids had it when they were 7.
Robbie Marshall.
Right.
I grew up with him. I raced 50s and 60s. Like, they wanted to kill people. And I always looked at that and I was like, man, I wish I could do that, but I don't want it. Like, and then I finally matured, and all of a sudden my brain just, like, it clicked. I wanted to win. And that was it. I didn't want anything else but to win. So I think, you know, and I see some of these kids, like, there are kids racing TJ's class on the national level, obviously, that just want nothing else than to win. And I'm like, that's really cool. Their dad and their parents are feeding into that and giving them opportunities to do with that what they will. When I see the parents like myself, you know, we go to Minios as an opportunity, but I can't take it too seriously. Like, my kid's not there.
No, I get it. We've only done Minios once. It was an awesome experience. You know, like, there were some extreme lows and then some pretty good highs for us. Like, it's, you know, at end of the week, it ended up being awesome, but it was a rough week for us. You know, like, it's just, and it wasn't that he wasn't ready. He had crashed Supercross, dislocated shoulder, this, that, and still ended up being able to ride moto and qualifying for most of his classes. But, like, when you're there and in your first heat race you crash and dislocate your shoulder and you think your week's over, that's an expensive week. Like, that's it's tough.
I said it with Ronnie, and I'll say it again. My kid made it through the whole week with no crashes.
And you said that, and that's some of the ruts. And I mean, Supercross track, you're not getting all those ruts, but that outdoor track, it's not like it used to be. It used to be hard as a rock. Dry, just kind of miserable, and now that, you know, it's getting ripped, they brought in some different soil. There's some ruts, and it's a gnarly track.
I've got video of TJ in a rut, and he's like, it's up to his shoulders. He is up to his shoulders in a rut. You know, like, I wonder how these big bikes get, like, my eyes would be this wide. Like, it's really, really cool. It's intimidating. That place is intimidating.
Yep.
But and hopefully we get to see more places like that and do more things, and this foundation grows on that. Have you guys did you with Grantley ever shoot for Loretta's? Did you ever give that a go? The never-ending money pit that is trying to qualify for Loretta's.
Well, so I have so many different ways of looking at Loretta's. Like, it's something I want to do. We did multiple Loretta's qualifiers. We go to the areas. Obviously, the area in most places, I don't want to say easy, but it's like the areas are almost just a waste of time a little bit.
Yeah.
But we go to the area, they've had them at 207, and we can only go winners classes at the area. And then, we talk about it for a month or two, like, hey, if you do this or you do this, like part of it was like school, like if you're doing good, we'll go. Or you need to do this. You need to do this. We need to make sure you're riding twice a week. Don't make an excuse to me on why we're not going to ride, or I don't feel like riding, or it's raining, or I don't like that track. Like, you're just going to ride. And then to come down to a week or two before the regional or whatever it is, and he hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
And I get mad for a day or a little while of conversation. I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But people are like, you going to the regional? No. And they're like, why not? And I'm like, because he didn't put in any work. I'm not going. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get sucked into this. I'm not going to waste my time going to the regional if he's not going to be at his best. Because if he's not at his best, he has no chance of making it. And, like this, and that's what it is. The Loretta's is awesome. I like mini-O's. I like the fact that mini-O's, you show up and you qualify. Like you can't do that at every event. I get it. But the thousands and thousands of dollars that people have to pay to get to Loretta's, and you go and ride an area qualifier and they take the top 9, but then you show up at the regional and you have to qualify for your class again? Well, why did the area ever exist? It doesn't make sense. Like, in my eyes, I may look at it wrong, but you show up at the regional and there's 80 kids in your class. Well, why did you ride the area? They only took 9 there. I've seen kids show up at the regional that didn't make it at the area and ride the regional. And like it's a really, really weird system. And I mean, I know there's a lot going on, but
and there's room for growth. There's a new petition going around for Loretta's to get rid of, abolish the gate picks for the first moto.
Yep.
That I actually signed the petition because I agree with it. Why should you show up as a number 1 seed rider, go out and get
and have
the
to
fastest
pick a pin.
lap times in practice and have to pick a pin?
Yep.
I agree. I think that should be changed, and there's a lot of things that should be changed with that. And I think there's a lot of things that could be changed across the board with motocross, especially amateur, the youth racing.
Yep.
I've suggested a million times get rid of number 1 plates for 50s, 60s, and 80s.
Right.
There's nothing. There's too much clout put on a number 1 plate for no reason.
Right. Oh,
because
it's very true. And I mean, at some of these races, kids are getting number 1 plates, and there's 8 kids there.
Yeah.
At some of them, and that's
Travis. And don't get me wrong, Travis got a number 1 plate, AMA number 1 plate at the main state championship.
Yep.
You know where that number 1 plate is? It's in my gun safe, right next to the things that protect my family.
Yep.
Because I love it. He raced against 3 kids.
Oh yeah, we've got some of those too. We've got some of those from main state championship.
It's still going to live in my safe.
Yep. We got those. One of the very few trophies that Grantley has in his room. Like, he doesn't have a lot in there. He has the stuff that he's proud of what he did, but that's
But man, the money people spend for those things,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
it's crazy.
Let's chat real quick. We've talked a lot about you, a lot about Grantley growing up, and I still want to kind of pick your brain on that stuff. But what's it like running a motocross dealership where the Moto dad is your bread and butter?
Mm-hmm.
What's that like? Obviously the things you must hear are next level because when I have an idea, I know I'll call you up. Hey, I got an idea. And typically, by the way, when I call with an idea, hang the phone up because my ideas are elaborate and cost a lot of money. But what is that like for you? Because you have to hear this. You have to, obviously your eyes probably shut. And what is it like hearing these moto dads ordering these bikes, parts, everything that goes into it, and you see it from your side, and again, that's your bread and butter. What's that like?
Well, first off, I want to go back to how you started that off, and you said run a motocross dealership, which is what I love to hear, because we're a race shop. Like, race shops, there's very few that exist anymore. So if you're going to do a race shop and be based around racing, you kind of got to do it right. You got to have the parts, you got to have the bikes, you got to have the staff that knows what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, so it's tough to say, you know. So moto dads, moto moms, you know, it's every single person that's buying these bikes for their kids, it's because obviously we love our kids. Everybody thinks their kid is great, you know, whatever, but I just kind of try and I approach every single parent kind of the same. I mean, some are more intense than others, but, you know, if a parent is talking up their kid and whatever else, I'm kind of just, that's great to hear, you know, like sometimes I'll throw it a little bit of like, well, maybe you should try this instead or whatever else, but, you know, because there's some parents that, I mean, all they'll do is talk about how good their kid is doing and, you know, like, or the stuff that throws me a little bit is, you know, my kid did this, but it's almost like they talk to me like I'm detached from the racing. I feel pretty strongly that I know as much as the next guy that knows a lot with New England Moto. Like, I stay as attached as I can. I'm reading everything. I'm watching everything. I'm talking to people that are at this race. If I don't know, hey, what happened here? What happened there? Like, I'm looking at results for every organization every Tuesday or Wednesday night at home on my iPad. Like, my wife is like, what are you doing? You're just staring at results. You didn't even race. I'm like, I want to know who's doing what. And I don't just go look at the classes Grantley's in. I start at the 4 to 6, and I honestly go through every single class. I want to know what's going on. You know, like that way. Yeah. I have people that come buy bikes from me, and they're like, yeah, we race. They say the name. I'm like, yeah, I know of you or whatever. And they're like, really? Like I feel like I'm very in touch with everything that's going on. But the moto dad, you know, that I get where they're coming from. You know, it's a tough thing. Some of these moto dads are spending every dime they have, you know, like, oh, let's wait till Thursday to run my card, or like, because they will do whatever they have to do to get that kid to the races. But that's part of the problem, because they feel like they're missing out on something. And I feel that most people are probably racing too much. And that's why you get to the point at the end of the year where you go to Mini-O's, then your kid doesn't even mention their dirt bike once, and you're a month afterwards. Yeah. You know, it's like the kid dirt bike? Like what? Like it's out of sight, out of mind.
It blows my mind because I have an obsession with video. Like, I grew up doing video production. So I feel like I have a very healthy way of dealing with my son being on the track. Yep. I don't stress out because I have a camera in my hand and I'm videoing. Right. I'm very detached from his racing, right? Yep. I can kind of separate and be, you know, I can watch the race and do my thing. I leave him alone. Every once in a while I'll yell at him. But the cool thing with that is I have all this video of his racing. Well, I was looking at this last week and I'm like, we raced a lot.
Right. Yep.
And I know what the moto dad is thinking. Oh, we just broke apart. I can't race next weekend. Right? That's what you're thinking. Oh, yeah. This is my year. This is next weekend, that's our track. We have to be there. What are those phone calls like for you? Because you're closed Monday.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Tuesday must be...
Tuesday's pretty crazy. During racing season, well, the phones start getting answered at 9, but the phones start ringing at about 8:50, and it doesn't stop till about 1 or 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I need those parts. My kid's 5th in points. And I mean, okay, yeah, but, you know, like, it's luckily, you know, we learn every day about parts that we think we have everything, and then all of a sudden somebody orders something like, wow, well, we sold quite a few of those. Why don't we have that in stock? Yeah. So then all of a sudden that's in stock from now on, and it's every week it changes and changes and changes in our inventory on parts now, for especially motocross or even like J-Day or Hare Scrambles bikes it's pretty crazy. Obviously, last 2 years has been a little bit wild availability-wise with the pandemic and stuff, but we still busted our ass to find the parts somehow, get some option here for the people to keep them at the races. So it's
you hear a lot of, obviously, the dads and the moms talking about where they are with their son or daughter racing, and where they are in points or how they're doing, and because it's hard not to talk about your kid.
Absolutely.
I have a theory. It's called my meatball theory, where when you have a kid, it's a little meatball, okay? Like, it doesn't do anything.
Right.
Like, it doesn't.
Yep.
So the first time it, makes a noise, you're like, woo!
Mm-hmm.
And that carries through its entire life, right? My kid just rode a dirt bike. Grant, did you hear my kid just rode a dirt bike? And you're like, yep.
Yep.
I did. Did you hear my kid just won an AMA #1 plate at Maine State Championship? And the disconnect is that you've got those same trophies sitting at your house.
Yep.
You've got these same things, and that's what's really cool, I think, about motorbikes to me, and every interaction I've ever had with you or your staff is you guys, you can sense that you've been there and you've done that, right?
Yep.
But you don't ever make somebody feel out of place. That's really cool to me, because there's some dealerships where you'll go and you'll talk to them, and you've got your local pro that's all chest high,
Yep.
Oh yeah, I've been there, I've done that. But you don't feel that here, I feel like there's always some sort of interest in what's going on and pumped about it. But hopefully I haven't given you that Moto Dad story of you get off the phone and you're like, you got to hear this one.
No, and there are those.
Yeah.
There are those, and it's kind of you got to make everybody feel, I guess, welcome to the shop. It's an environment that people like, even if they don't need anything. We have a lot of people that just come in, say hi, hang out a bit, because it's very low key. It's a very low key, place to work. Also, everybody thinks they want to work at Motorbikes. I'm like, yeah, Grant's a different guy when you work for him. I'm not I feel I'm not brutal, but if I hear, you just said, you call and you talk to someone and you feel like they, but if I feel that I'm standing at my desk and I overhear something come out of one of my guys' mouth on the phone, not even telling the person they're wrong or anything else, but just the way they just respond to the person asking the question. And they'll get off the phone and I'll be like, what was that? No, we don't know. The guy obviously didn't know how to explain it to you, but then you just made them, whether you made them feel stupid or not. Yeah. I sensed that you were talking to them they didn't understand, they didn't get it. And that's why they're calling you, because you're supposed to know. So you need to figure it out. And
that's my biggest, thing about this industry. Is the dealerships, when you walk in, they're either too cool for school, or you'll get the ones that don't know a thing, and that's tough too. Yeah, that's tough too. What do you think? All these kids are out there and they're racing, and their parents are thinking about what's next, right? So because they get into it. I have people that I've seen get into the sport with their kid and they start racing and they talk to somebody, well, where's the biggest level we can go, right? Mm-hmm. Is there a disillusion to, we get to the biggest level we can go, we do really well, and then we get sponsored? What's the disillusion with sponsorship there? Because this is a tough sport. It's an expensive sport.
Oh, yeah.
Motorbikes, we'll take you for instance, because you have the experience and you see it firsthand. When you sell a 450 for, what are they going for, 12,000, 13 now?
MSRP on a 450 right now is probably 10.3 on a KTM.
And your margin on that, after everything's said and done, is maybe 10-15%. Maybe a little bit more? No, not as much? No. Okay, so we're talking at the highest level, right? Yep. So when I call about a dirt bike, I I I I never expect a discount because there's nothing to discount, right? I'm not talking just motorbikes. I bought bikes other places. I don't expect a discount. Is there a disconnect between this? My kid's doing this. I deserve this in return.
There is, for sure.
And Motorbikes has done really well with your social media presence, with the brand. Like, it's probably one of the stronger brands in New England. What is that like? What is that conversation like with you?
So it's tough. I have the people that call and say, I do this or I do this. My kid does this. And my answer to most of these people, because it's not that you have to earn it at Motorbikes, but everybody gets a fair deal. Like, some people have in their minds that this guy's getting bikes and this guy's getting bikes. Just because some guy goes on social media or some rider and thanks us and says, thanks so much to Motorbikes, I wouldn't do this without their help, doesn't mean they're getting a bike.
Can we just clear the air? Nobody gets bikes anymore.
Very true. Like, Kawasaki has a little bit of like a demo program and stuff, but that's very, very limited.
Nobody's getting bikes.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, when I was a B rider in New England, I was paying $1,000 for a 125 for the year and giving the bike back at the end of the year. Like, that's what I like. Yep. And I have people that want to do that with us. I'm like, it's not what I do. I do the same thing for everybody else. My pro guys have a certain, program, whatever else, but you kind of got to, with me, like, loyalty is a big thing. Loyalty is a huge thing with us. Like, I tell people, like, how do you want us? Do you want us to run your graphics? Will you get me free graphics? I'm like, I'm not going to pay for everybody's graphics. Like, some shops do that. I'm not going to do that. My approach is, we're going to have the parts you need. You buy a bike from me, you're going to get a discount right off the bat. And that discount stays until, we may do a report at the end of the year and see that person didn't come in once after they bought the bike. Yeah. If they didn't come, they may lose that discount. Or, hey, that guy's been hurt, whatever. And then when they come back in, I'll probably give them a discount anyways. Yeah. And, not necessarily the more money they spend with the shop, but you can kind of earn a little bit better deal as you go. And it's one of those things where, and it's a sad thing to say now, but like, you fill out a resume for any of these companies these days, and one of the first questions is, what's your Instagram handle? Yep. Like, social media has taken over this. It's taken over most sports, but it's really taken over moto. Mm-hmm. It's kind of one of those things where, you have the precedence. What's your social media? And me, I try my best to do our social media, but I'm a 47-year-old dude that's not very tech savvy. I just throw stuff out there. I share anybody that tags us, I reshare it or whatever. That's my goal, and just kind of, and so people they like that because obviously they feel that they're being promoted. So you promote me, I'll promote you. That's kind of how I look at it. But loyalty is a big thing. The guy that calls me and is selling himself or selling his son, I get it. Everybody wants to sell themselves. Everybody wants a good deal. They want the attention. But when you do that, and then I show up at the races and I just go down the line with my son or whatever, and I see them down, hey, Grant, how you doing? Hey, good, man, how are you? And I kind of look over their bike, and there's not even a plus or anything on their bike that represents Motorbikes. And it's like, well, why are you getting a discount from me? Like, and some people, I think after a little while, they kind of realize what's going on and they kind of figure it out. But it's like, well, they didn't give me this and they didn't give me that. It's like,
this is, and it's a tough. And okay, so let me circle back to my issues with it is, I try not to put out there anything that is like kind of false advertisement. Like, okay, we got a bike at Motorbikes Plus. Mm-hmm. Like, I try not to make it sound like we got a free bike from Motorbikes Plus, because that to me sets everybody else around us up for a bad time. Now people are calling like, hey, Travis got a free bike. Why wouldn't we get a free bike? Right? Yep. That puts a lot of strain on the heart of this sport, which is the motorcycle dealership. Without getting bikes and parts and that stuff, you're done, right? So it puts a lot of strain on that. So I try to stay away from that. But it goes all the way to the top. Like, it goes all the way to the pro, like, top of the pros,
yeah, it does.
where a lot of these marketing or even podcasts are just screaming at the top of their lungs. These guys are absolutely rich beyond their belief.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a conversation with Justin Starling, who's going racing all year.
Yep.
And him and I think it's Jerry Robin are living out of their van.
Yep.
They're going to live out of a van. They're going
Right.
to do 17 rounds of Supercross living out of a van.
Right.
You want, like, motocross? That's it. Go talk to those guys in the pits, because that's what you're gearing up for.
Right.
You know, and it starts down here. We have to respect the dealerships, and we have to respect the, you know, we have to respect everybody and trying not to just take, you know.
And that's the thing. It's too many people kind of just think this guy's getting that. Why am I not getting it? And I have so many people that call and their line is, I want the Pizza Willie deal. It's like,
Yep.
What? So
Well, and,
what is the Pizza Willie deal? Tell me what that is, because
and we hurt ourselves too, because look how big Motorbikes Plus looks with your riders, and especially with J-Day blowing up. Like, you have overachieved on building a brand.
Yep.
Because now everybody thinks this is this multi-million-dollar organization that we could one day align ourselves with. Well, you know, $1 million ain't that much. Just letting you know.
No,
it's
not.
Like, this is, but you've done a really good job at branding and building that brand. So, one, congratulations on that, because you know, you may be 47, you said?
Yep, just turned 47 last week.
You know, you and I know Cody's helped out a little bit. You guys have done, like, such a good job on social media and, like, in the past few years. And
yeah, and I try, but it's kind of like, I ask people, I'm like, geez, the content doesn't come to me as quick as some people, and, you know, but, you know, it's good, you know, the customers or the riders, it makes it easier for me when they're putting out stuff and thanking all their sponsors and tagging us in it, because it gives me something to post. So it's not a dead airwave, you know, it's kind of just.
Well, in 2021 and in 2022, that's almost what you're paying for, right?
Yep.
So if you provide a discount, you're almost asking for some content, right? Give me something to reshare, because you don't have the time to go out and do that. You're running a dealership. If you have 20 riders every weekend posting something, tagging you, now you have content for the week.
And that's pretty much how it's been. Like, this time of year gets a little more quiet, but you know, like, you know, but then I have guys, you know, like, getting new bikes now, so then I can put that out there. And, you know, like, as far as, like, pro class guys in New England, like, I've had guys call me in the past and be like, yeah, really, you know, can you go to bat for me with KTM and help me out and get this? And I'm like, all my pro guys get the same deal. Like, they really do. And, you know, that's why they kind of stick around. And, you know, if you look at a list of how many of the pro guys in New England that run motorbikes decals on their bikes, it's kind of mind blowing. Like, I think about it and I'm like, geez, I got this guy, he just won all of this. I got this guy that won all this. And it's pretty crazy. And it's not like I don't recruit them. I think they just realize, like, I had a top guy from New England call me about 2 months ago, and he's like, I want to ride for you guys. I want to represent you guys, because I know you're going to have the parts. I know you're going to give me whatever help you can. You know, I'm going to have a presence on social media. If I tag you, like, you're going to re-tag and whatever else and repost. And he gets it. He might not have gotten it a few years ago, but he gets it now. And it's kind of...
And just a message to the moto dads that are listening to this. Young, older, whatever it may be, this sport is cutthroat.
Oh, yes.
There are so many stories from the top to the bottom of people not being paid, of people getting screwed out of deals, you know, even kids getting absolutely hung out to dry.
Oh, yeah.
In this sport. This sport, if you find somebody that you trust and that you can build a long-term relationship with, it is worth more than anything. Because even in the pro ranks, maybe a guy that, you know, Road Factory KTM that just left the scene a couple of years ago. Maybe he didn't get paid for a couple of years.
Yep.
It happens.
Yep.
There are these stories at every single level of this sport. And isn't it weird? It almost seems okay. Like, it almost seems like...
The amount of stories about guys not getting paid is
It's
mind-blowing. It really
is.
Yeah, it is. It's mind-blowing.
So, we're going to we'll take a quick break, and we'll come back. We'll take 5. No, you're good. You're good. We got a visitor here at Motorbikes on the day off, which is awesome. We're gonna take 5. Come back and finish this thing up.
Awesome.
Session 2, beer number
Round
2.
two.
I brought down some of Maine's finest beer. What'd you think?
I think it's really good. I'm pretty new to the IPA thing within the last month.
I knew you were a good beer guy.
I'm a Bud Light guy, true and true, and the amount of IPAs I've drank in the last 4 weeks is kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah,
yes.
It's good. It's good to have one. Everyone, let's cheers to the Moto Dad
for sure. Yeah.
show number 2. I'm a Coors Light guy, so if you see me at the track and you want to say hi to me, and by saying hi you want to like bring over a 6-pack, it's Coors Light all day. I'll drink an IPA.
It's the parents that hit me up later at night at the track. The ones that I hang out with, they know that I'm a big tequila guy.
Ooh, so if you're coming to talk dirt bikes with Grant, come bearing gifts. And it's tequila. It's got to be good tequila.
Bring tequila and bring something to mix it with, and I'll talk to you until the sun comes up.
My business partner Paul just got back from Mexico about a month ago, and he got into tequila down there, but he got into like really good tequila, and now that's his thing. So.
Yeah, no, it's become a big thing for me the last couple of years.
That's
it definitely has. It's kind of crazy, but
alcoholic Moto dads.
Right, exactly. And hey, Moto dads and Moto moms, they consume some serious booze. Not all of them.
We do.
But they do. There's no doubt about it.
What is it? Okay, so at the dirt bike track, there are different types of moto parents, right? Yep. There are the enablers, the ones that are setting up opportunities for their kids. Mm-hmm. There are, and these are just different classifications. There are the ones that are just pushing way too hard. We see them all the time. And then you have the parents that, are almost like neglectful, right? So their kids' bikes are falling apart. Their kids are freaking out because they're DNFing races. Yep. Their dad's usually the one, and we drink beer, don't get me wrong, but their parents are usually the ones that are into, a 6-pack deep at 10 a.m. We've seen them at the track. Mm-hmm. And I try, and I'm trying to think of ways, like what's a healthy way to intervene with some of these parents, right? So let's say you got a friend, even a friend like of yours that is just freaking out about his kid, where he is. How come you're not doing this? We've all said the line. Yep. I'm selling the bikes. We've all said that.
Yep.
By the way, when you say it, do you see it come out of your mouth? Do you watch the thing? Like I've said it before, and you watch it come out of your mouth. You can see
the words. It looks like a plane flying overhead with a banner off the back.
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly, yep.
I mean, is there a healthy way to intervene there, or is it just you just got to sit back and watch?
Yeah, you kind of got to sit back and watch. It's like, and it's just a learning thing, and some people just kind of, they think because they put new clutch plates and clutch springs in their bike that the thing should be great, but as soon as they put it in, you can hear that it's still not moving because they didn't look at the clutch basket or the pressure plate or anything else, and that stuff is so smoked that it doesn't matter. You can buy clutches till you're blue in the face. It doesn't matter. The bike's still not going to go anywhere if everything else is worn out. And
I love that aha moment I'll have. Oh, I need to do this to the dirt bike, and I'll do it the next day, and then the kid rides the same.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I've stopped kind of. I learned a long time ago, I don't even bother telling Grantley anything that I've done to his bike. Yeah. But, that's one thing that I would say did wrong with Grantley's racing is I never taught him how to do anything. Yeah. So he kind of looks like this kid right now. Like, people ask him, what do you have on this on your bike? This is, talk about a disconnected motocross kid. This kid knows nothing about his bike. And I always had this theory, like, I'm not letting him put air filters in a bike. I'm not letting him do all this other stuff because in the end, at some point, it's going to end up costing me more money. But now he's 18 and he needs to be able to do this stuff.
That happened to me. My dad, I was very lucky when I was a kid where when I got to 65s, I had a sponsor buy dirt bikes for me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this was a third-party sponsor that bought us new bikes every year. So we got crated dirt bikes. Like, you don't get that. I wasn't fast by any means, but it's a relationship thing.
Right.
By the way, a piece of advice for moto dads, relationships at the track are everything.
Yeah,
relationships outside the tracks, because what your kids are doing right now, not a lot of kids will do in life. Okay? Your kids are doing an extreme sport. A lot of these guys want to live out their dreams of extreme sports through their friends' kids. Making these relationships. You can pull the right sponsors at the right times just by making a cool relationship.
Oh, yeah.
My dad did that, right? So I had dirt bikes, purchased for me. But a part of that was he never let me touch them, right?
Right.
So by the time I finally got, like you're talking with Grantley, by the time I finally got to have my YZ125, that was my bike, I went through 2 top ends. Because we rode sand tracks. Like, that was our thing. Like, sand pits, sand tracks. I sucked dirt twice. It cost me, $200 every time.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
And so it's tough. You want to teach them what to do, but there's also like what happens if they mess up a little bit.
Right.
Grant, you raced a lot growing up. You raced at high levels. Is there any feeling in the world like having your son out on a dirt bike track on a bike that you've maintained? Like, what?
I mean, that's kind of something I take pride in, and I've actually had people like, so someone has an issue with their bike, and they say, what about, I keep on doing this, this keeps breaking, I say, we put 120 hours on Grantley's bike, we never had that problem. And I've had people look me in the face, yeah, you're just saying that because you're the dealer, and that's what you sell, and I'm like, no, and I don't overly do things, but I'm not always messing with stuff. Jetting, I'll run the same jetting all year. Not in the winter, but all season with pretty much just needle clip adjustment and air screw adjustment. And that is it. Like, I kind of get it dialed into the point where I don't want to be messing with stuff. I don't want to be on the razor's edge lean-wise to make that thing scream. It's like, I just kind of, I want it to be simple because I don't want to be, I got to tear this carb off between motos. And like, I could go a full season when we rode 50s. I mean, 50s are a lot of work. It doesn't matter what brand you ride. 50s are a lot of work. When you can go a whole season, never take a carburetor off your 50 once, and that's when people look at you and say, you're full of it. Like, there's no way that happened. Like, I'm telling you right now. Like, I went 2 seasons, never pulled a carburetor off 50. Like, but I am like brutal with air filters and stuff like that. Like, and it's, or with my fuel, like putting fuel into the tank or my fuel can. Like, every time I put fuel in my fuel can, I look inside, see if there's anything floating around. Like, that stuff people don't realize. They're at the track and they suck dirt and they clean it out. It sucked a little bit of dirt. Yeah, well, a little bit of dirt. These are bearings. Like, these are tolerances that need, like, people overlook it, and they're having these issues because they sucked a little dirt and they think it's fine. But if I suck dirt on a bike, I'm rebuilding it. Like, and that's, I mean, I do have the means a little different than a lot of people, but it's better off doing that than going to the races and then the thing pops on you and you're pissed off at everybody else. But really, if you had just sucked a little dirt and rebuilt it, you would have been fine. But
I flushed my first bottom end this past summer. And I actually called here and I talked to Jay and I said, hey, what do I do? And he says, I'm gonna he says, I'll send you the bottom end. He says, don't put the bottom end in yet, but I'll send it to you. He said, flush the bottom end, fresh top end, fresh everything. And the bike's been fine ever since. We've got another 30 hours on the bike. I've got the bottom end sitting there because I was nervous, but And it was a little bit of mud inside the airbox. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, there were no signs in the top end. There was nothing. But again, it's that kid, and I don't know what I'm going to do if my son ever makes it to the point where he is jumping some of these doubles and triples on a 60 or an 85. That to me, it's so scary, and
yep.
I was talking with Andy Matthew the other day, and we were talking about motocross and how much time and effort we put into coaches and this and that. And I was telling him, imagine if I took my 6-year-old and I put him in financial coaching, how to invest your money,
mm-hmm.
how to get into the stock market,
right.
how to get into those things. What do you think someone would say to you if you did that with your 6-year-old?
You're crazy.
You're crazy. That's an adult mindset. It's just way too mature.
Yep.
Well, do you know what some of the 6-year-olds were doing at Minios?
Right.
That's an adult concept.
Yep.
Hitting a triple.
Right.
Jaden Smart, who, by the way, one of the fastest kids in the country, on a 50cc in the 4 to 8 class, because he's 8, he's at the top, but he's on the line with my son. That dude's hitting step-ups.
The jumps he was doing on the moto track, he was doing all the jumps that the big bikes were doing on the moto track, pretty much.
Now, you're going to take your 8-year-old and say, you know what, let's hold him off on financial stuff. And that is where some of these people get into trouble, right? Let's not focus on the adult things, but let's give them something that is so... I know full-grown adults right now that couldn't go out there and do what Jaden Smart did on that track.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
For sure.
I couldn't.
Most.
I couldn't hit those step-ups.
Yep.
So it's funny. It's you're taking something... It seems adolescent, but it's not.
Right.
It's very much an adult concept.
Yep, for sure. For sure.
I don't know how I got that far into it.
Hey,
but...
sometimes we just ramble on and go off into the distance.
So a couple things we have to do on the Moto Dad show. Let's start with this. The Moto Dad podcast, we have to have a Mount Rushmore of Moto Dads, okay? I know who the Godfather is. Everybody knows who the Godfather is.
Absolutely.
It's Alessi.
Yep.
Right? Has to be. Tony Alessi is the pinnacle of Moto Dad. Behind him, a close second place, I've got to put Big James.
Yep.
He's just... And my criteria for this is, obviously notoriety. Everybody has to know who they are. Right?
Right.
Everybody knows who Tony Alessi is. Probably one of the most successful guys in our sport at creating two monsters.
Yep.
And then starting to run a motocross team and managing this team to an extreme, like a lot of success, right?
And then hearing from his riders, and all you think about Tony Alessi, you hear how crazy he is, and then these riders tell you how good of a team manager he is, and they're like, he's an amazing team manager.
Unbelievable team manager. So he's got all these skills. Big James the same way. Big James is a celebrity at the track. I've been around the haulers before. He's a celebrity.
Yep.
Everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows what he's done. Not only has he done it once, but he's done it twice. Like Tony, he's got Malcolm, who is probably poised for his best season yet.
I hope so.
I hope so too. I think everybody is on that train.
Yep.
So there's a couple more I have, but I haven't quite set in stone. See what I did there? Mount Rushmore, stone.
Yep, I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to vote for Deegan.
Yep.
I got to vote for this guy because what he has done, and I don't know if your kids watch YouTube much, but the YouTube channel that Brian has built for his kids is an insane encyclopedia for information, right?
Yep.
My son watches it all the time for just the entertainment aspect of it. But inside of there are so many Moto Dad moments. Like he's talking about breaking the pit board in half when Hayden was on 50s at Loretta's. like he's got these moments of humility, as well as how he's growing, and I think he has set the stage for what it is supposed to be a moto dad, right? Like he has given everything to his kids, and he already had a successful thing going.
More than successful. You win a Supercross, whether it's 125, 250, 450, whatever, you're legit. It doesn't matter how you look at it.
So Mount Rushmore, to me, and I'm going to put this out to vote, but Mount Rushmore of motor, wow. Let me come back. Mount Rushmore of moto dads has to have Brian Deegan on it. It has to. Beyond there, I'm kind of at a loss. There's a few like I'd love to put out a vote. John Tomac is one that I would love to suggest. He he's an incredible athlete.
Beast
in mountain biking.
Yep.
And what he has done to create, a monster of an athlete out of Eli, because, make no mistake, Eli Tomac is a product of the Tomac family.
Absolutely.
Like that is not they didn't bring coaches in to make Eli Tomac.
A few little coaches over the year, like Budman and stuff like that, but those are guys just to refine things. But John had his whole plan from the beginning, and I feel it's a pretty. I mean, obviously you can't be too laid back to be a successful moto dad or moto family, but feels a pretty mellow approach to the racing thing to get to where they were as far as in big scheme of things. So,
and there's some other ones out there. I'd love to put it to vote, because some of the dads, like Cooper Webb's dad, was intense and awesome to be around, and Alan Cianciarulo. The stories of Alan go back so far, to what he, who he was and what he did. So I don't know. Are there any nominations that you have?
My mind has been going crazy since you just started saying this, and like, I'm kind of at a loss. Like it's one of those things. Like, but that's because Tony and Big James, they kind of like, they stick out instantly. Like anybody's gonna think of them. It's kind of, I look at, you look at over the years, and you look at like. I mean, obviously, he's not a moto dad, but like Jeannie Carmichael, obviously she must have been unbelievable. And then you see video, obviously Ricky was a beast. He was this pudgy little thing when he was little, and then all of a sudden just turned into this absolute animal. But then you see her now, 25 years later, and she's at the goat farm working with guys from Star. It's like she's an animal, so obviously she has. So
does the Mount Rushmore of moto dads end up with a female on it? Could it end up with a Jeannie Carmichael? I thought about this myself.
If any female was going to be there, it's her. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a ton of moto moms out there that are absolutely killing it with their programs and everything, but it's like, she's been doing this for what now? 35 years?
Yeah.
How old is Ricky now? He's got to be 40. Is he 40?
And those are stories too of kids that wouldn't be where they were without their parents. Ricky,
for sure.
There's no way.
There's no chance. Right.
James, there's no way. James and Malcolm, there's no way.
Yep.
Their parents put so much into this. It's not like it is today. You don't all of a sudden you don't have a talented kid and then other people come in and help. It wasn't like that.
Right. No, it's the sport is so different now. And you sound, you feel like an old man saying it, but for instance, in New England, every track that these kids race, they can practice on during the week. Almost every track in New England, that was unheard of when I was racing. Yep. Unheard of. You're riding some nasty ass moon dust sand track during the week with boulders the size of your front wheel.
Yep.
And now it's you feel like the kids are spoiled, but it's progressed the sport so much because of that. So it's.
Well, you can say what you will, but it's almost legitimized the sport, right?
Yep. Right.
You almost find yourself in. It almost feels more. It feels bigger.
Yep.
It feels more intense.
Yep.
So I gotta ask you. This is Moto Dad to Moto Dad. My opinion with dirt bikes is doesn't really matter. They're all great, right? These manufacturers put so much money into these dirt bikes.
Oh yeah.
But I'm a mini dad. Okay, my kid rides PW50 still, which will be the death of me because these PW50s are just the just the culture around a PW50, like a PW50 Moto Dad. We have, you buy a brand new bike, you put Mika handlebars on it, you put the pegs on it, you call the ProFlow guy to get your ProFlow motor done, which is $1,000.
Yep.
You do all this stuff, and you have a bike that is now runs correctly because a PW50 runs like garbage, coming out of the.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
So you have all this money in this, and then my kid goes out and gets 14th, 15th at a big race, and then you'll take a guy like Bryson Woodman who goes out and does it on a stock bike.
Yep.
When Matt told me that, it blew my mind because I was asking Matt, like, hey, Bryson, okay, what motor did you use? And he's like, what are you talking about? Well, what'd you use for a motor for Bryson's PW50? He's like, the one that you buy it with.
Right.
Like, okay, it's the rider. Right, it is the rider. Now, the motor helps a little bit. When you get to some of these regionals, you got to pull up hills, but a lot of it's the rider. Did you see the photos out of Arizona, the AZ Open?
I know exactly where you're leading with this.
What do you think about that? Now, obviously, there has to be checks and balances. But with a 54-6 shaft drive class, are we really tearing kids' bikes down like that?
I know. It's sad. I almost feel like... I don't know. I mean, like, do they have to make the class a younger class and just tell them you can make a carb modification to your bike and that's it and just run a PW? Or does there have to be more repercussions for the people that are filing the protests? You have the parents that, hey, $100 or whatever.
Well, I got a story for you.
So.
Loretta's a couple of years ago, and this is a hearsay story. Do not take this for Bible at all. Top 10 at Loretta's got protested. PW50 shaft drive class. Last race, they all got protested. One of the kids, one of the dads, his kid was in the top 10 that protested everybody, put up the money. I think it's $150 a piece? Maybe 200.
It's not enough, honestly.
You're putting up a lot of money. Everybody passed. But then somebody in the top 10 protested his kid, and they left before awards. Did not get an award. So the guy that put up all this money, thousands of dollars, to protest the top 10 at Loretta's, didn't pass his protest. That's incredible. Like, it's... Where does it end? And for what?
It doesn't end because with the PW has been the same for 35 years or whatever, however long it's been, 40 years.
And I'm still in the middle of it.
And it's still the same bike, and it's still the same stuff going on with them. But it's like, I mean, we never did PWs. Grantley had a JR50 at one point, for 6 months, and we got a KTM. But it's like, why even have an amateur national championship on a PW50? What does it mean? Like, I mean, I get it, but it's almost like it's more of a money grub than anything. Because I mean, a kid on a PW could win a PW title and never qualify for Loretta's ever again in his life. You never know. Like, it's.
And then you get the same thing up through the ranks, like I said, 60s, 85s, super minis. Do you know how many super mini superstars I've seen in my life never even go pro?
Right.
Never even go pro.
Which is crazy, because obviously they're nasty.
If you can go out and win a Loretta's championship on a super mini, you've got it. You've got it made. But guess what? It's motocross.
Yeah, I mean, think of some of these kids B Mazy. Like that, I mean.
Oh, he hit one root. He hit one root at Zach Bell's.
Right. I mean, that kid.
And it destroyed his career.
Right. Yep.
Taron Odell. Whatever happened to him?
Right.
He was.
I actually just read the Vital or whoever it was did the article on him the other day. It was a small one, but had.
Dude, Baggett, Anderson, Barsha, they had nothing on Odell.
Yep.
Taron Odell was every moto. Like Zeb Smith, another kid. There's all these kids. So it is crazy to me that there's so much emphasis put on this PW50 class. And what it feels like in staging is it's a bunch of like pee-wee hockey dads, you know? Like, you ever see the South Park episode with pee-wee hockey?
Oh, yeah.
Where they're just tripping over each other?
Yep.
That's the PW50 class.
And I compare, moto dads and hockey dads are the same guy, just a different level. Like they're trying to be supportive, but we're all we have a little bit of crazy inside of us, every single one of us. And the guy that says he doesn't, he's just lying to himself. All of us have a little bit of crazy in there, or we wouldn't be doing it. A little
bit.
We wouldn't be doing it.
Like I said, we've all pulled the moto dad moments.
Yep.
So what do you think is the future? Do you think electric, obviously there's controversy going on at this moment with Loretta's and MX Sports coming out with a class that is at age group 4 to 7. Mm-hmm. Like that's an interesting kind of, I don't know what's going on there. Yep. Obviously it affects my son, but not really.
Right.
Probably not making it.
Yeah, but you never know. That kid, like I said, he could blow your mind.
I know.
You could take the whole winter off, and you could show up at the track in March or April, and the kid gets on the bike, and it's like he's been riding all. Some kids it just clicks. You never know.
I'm banking on that. I'm gonna bank on that.
Sounds good. It'll save you a lot of money if you just don't do anything all winter, but that's not what moto dads do.
But what do you think is the future? Do you think it is these electric bikes? They're talking about now doing 2 separate classes. Cobra is coming out with an electric bike.
Yep.
What, obviously you carry 3 brands of an electric bike. Is that the future? Are we looking at it? Are we seeing it unfold in front of us? Are we finally getting rid of the PW50 class? Like it, I
mean, that's the thing. I think the ones we sell, the EE5, the SXE5, the MC E5, It could eliminate the PW class, honestly, but should it? I don't know. I mean, it's the PW. You're probably not learning any more riding that bike than you are the e-bike as far as fundamentals. And fundamentals, you can do both on everything. You're not shifting on the PW. You're not learning that. You're not learning. It's kind of very similar, I guess, in that aspect. But it's like the manufacturers should come out with, like, for instance, the bike we sell, it's very adjustable. Like, you can get that thing to drop down like an inch or 2 without spending any money, and then you can buy a lowering kit and get it small enough for a 4-year-old. But
I have a friend that has a 3-year-old on it.
Yep. And I mean, that's the thing. I mean, but did he buy the suspension lowering kit and stuff?
I think so. Yeah, I do have.
So now at this point, he's got a $6,000 e-bike.
Raked out, looks like Cheech and Chong type ride.
So
because they're pretty raked out.
I feel like if these companies, R3, Cobra, whoever else, comes out with an e-bike, 10-inch front wheel, 10-inch rear wheel, because I feel like the e-bike is more important for the little guys. Mm-hmm. I think the PW would hurt Yamaha, but the PW would probably go away, or Yamaha would build one, because the maintenance, not that a PW is high maintenance, but
a PW50 is a garbage dirt bike through and through. My favorite that I've ever owned, but it's a garbage dirt bike. It really is, because of the memories that we get on it. Right? If those OSET little trials bikes are an awesome introduction into things.
They are.
There's so many cool ways to introduce, even a Stasic.
Yeah.
Honestly, our 16-inch Stasic could have replaced our PW50 if we're talking about not racing.
People that aren't racing for sure.
Just experience. It can replace that.
It's kind of like the, you're at the 50, the SXE5 or the EE5, that's your 50. But then, like part of moto, it's recreational world. I think the e-bike, unbelievable. Unreal. But as far as racing world, like part of racing, in my opinion, is you're learning how to shift, you're learning how to use a clutch, you're doing all these things. You move up to a 65, like if that becomes an e-bike, if the 85 becomes an e-bike, there's no shifting.
No.
There's no shifting, there's no learning your gears, there's no clutch control. It's just turn the throttle. So yes, riding a, I've ridden an Alta. I've ridden the free ride that we sell, like the big bikes. They're unbelievable. They are absolutely unbelievable. But part of moto is having good clutch control, being in the right gear, like doing all this other stuff. So there's so many levels of looking at this and deciding what's the better way. Obviously, the electric is going to make a huge push, and it could completely take over everything. But it's a different animal for sure.
It's cool to me. Couple things. When I was a kid, we went from the PW50 to a KX65. You were probably
So was it a 65 or a 60 at that point?
It might have been, my first bike might have been a 60.
Yep.
But it was at the age of 65. Do you know how long that took me to?
Well, the thing is, that KX60, you put a kid on a KX60 and they ride a KX60 back-to-back with a brand-new 65 KTM, a 7-year-old or 8-year-old or 9-year-old kid is going to tell you that KX60 makes more power than that KTM because it's a light switch.
Would those hit?
It's and it just lights up, and it's harder to learn. These new bikes are so easy to learn. It's almost like they have a recluse clutch in them in their race bikes. But that KX60, that's a different beast.
My
no power valve, it's just
My first experience with it, my dad took it out of the crate, built it, put it together. We're in my driveway. We got a dirt driveway. And in my first experience with a KX60 or 65, I can't remember what it was, he looped it out right in front of me. Just right over backwards. And I'm like, oh my God. So you're saying the new 65s are tamer. And what I'm alluding to is, like, our kids have so much more experience with the clutch hitting, and they don't even know it yet, right? Yep. Like, because these 50s, these SXs, like, they hit and they feel it, right? So, like, for me, we're not there yet. We're a couple of years away, but I see, like, Forrest McPherson gets onto a KX65, and he rides it so well, and I feel like he's so used to a clutch hitting that it's just second nature.
Yep.
Which is cool. My wife's a part of a dying breed. She knows how to drive a standard car.
And it's funny, so my wife is a huge believer. She does absolutely no motorsports, nothing. But her first car, what was it? Volkswagen Fox.
My wife's was an Audi. It was
it was a standard, and she truly believes that everyone that learns how to drive a car should learn how to drive a standard. And
100%.
She's probably right.
Yep.
But those things are like so few and far between now. It's crazy.
I got a call last year from Jimmy Myrick, a guy I respect thoroughly.
Yep.
With just his ability on a motocross bike, on a trail bike, everything. What he's done with his son.
Guy still rides every weekend, and he's probably almost 60 years old.
Yeah. Yep. He's the only guy that can take you from here to Canada without checking a map.
Right. Yep.
What he did with his son and everything. And he called me and he said, hey, what are you thinking about doing with TJ? And I said, we're looking at maybe putting him on a KTM 50. And he told me, he's like, I suggest you don't. Yep. I suggest you keep him right on that PW. Now, he's very old school.
Right.
But he's an underpowered type of guy. He kept Casey Myrick on a 125 for 4 years.
Right. Yep.
Casey was getting smoked in the B class, but once he finally got on a 4-stroke, he was one of the faster A riders in
and that's kind of the same approach I've kind of taken. And Casey was a very good rider. Yeah. Very good. Coming up through, not necessarily the top kid, and then all of a sudden just ripping.
So it's cool. It's cool to see. Like, everybody has a different way of doing it. Would you rather have your kid outgrow a bike or have him grow into a bike?
Outgrow. Well, I say that, and I blurt out an answer right away. But I have a lot of people come to me and say, should we get an 85? So let's say they're riding the 7 to 8 class and they get a 65. So then they age out of the 7 to 8 class on the 50, and they already had the 65 the year before. So now they just have a 65, and they're calling me about 85s. And I'm like, the 50 to the 65 transition, there's a transition there. You know, it's a learning process. 65 to 85, give the kid some time to just ride the same bike, not switching around, something they're familiar with for a long time. And then when they get on that 85, everything's going to come easier to them anyways. Unless they're a really big kid or small kid, every situation's different. But unless you're a really big kid, if a kid isn't oversized, I say let them almost age out. Like, not necessarily age out, but with Grantley, I think he was 15 years old. He still could have rode the 85, no problem. He was supposed to ride Super Mini. I bought him a brand new TC85 big wheel. Had Greg Links do the motor. I don't do motors. This, I'm like, we're going to do, this is your last year, but he was not a big kid.
Doing motors.
He went down to West Craven for a week. And he brought one of his Super Minis, and he rode a 150. One of the days, 150 two-stroke, full-size bike. Didn't ride his Super Mini the rest of the week. I was not there. He went down with some friends of mine, the Fazios, and he comes home. He goes, I'm not riding Super Mini. So he's 15 years old.
Yeah.
He is probably not even 5'2", and does not weigh 100 pounds. This kid he's still not a big kid. He's growing into himself finally now. And I'm like, dude, I don't care what suspension company you are. You cannot make that bike handle the way it really needs to. There's no way. They can tell you they will, but they will not. I said, you can ride the big bike this year. I said, but we're not racing.
Yep.
He's like, what do you mean? I said, we're not racing. It's not happening. I said, you can grow into that bike. You can get stronger. As you grow, we'll be fine. So we get all the way to August. I gave in. I took him to 2 Winchester races. He went there, rode 250C, Open C. He wins both. I'm like, great.
Oh, okay.
Great.
We're in trouble.
This kid weighs 100 pounds.
Yeah.
You start his bike and you think the thing needs a motor rebuild because the rear shock spring is so loose. It's just vibrating to all hell. And then we didn't race the rest of the year. And I'm like, why didn't we stay on Super Mini? But if he was fine with it, most kids wouldn't be fine with not racing.
Well, you have those stories going back, so you think about a motocross or a supercross rider, and you don't think about they're not you don't look at him and go, there's an athlete, right? Craig Doobie.
Yep.
My God, when that kid got on a big bike, he probably weighed the same amount as Grantley.
And the thing was, he got on a big bike for a year or so, and then went back to a Super Mini, I think, and went to Loretta's and got top 5.
Yeah, he beat Zach Osborne one moto.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we had the same thing with Adrian Mayo.
Yep.
The kid kept hammering his head into the ground on a Super Mini, and I kept telling Jamie, the kid's going to be a good big bike rider.
Yep.
Finally, after the regionals, they put him on a big bike.
Right. He's
unbelievable.
Ripping.
He is ripping.
Yep.
It goes back to you never know. You
never know.
Kudos to you for holding him away from the starting line for so long.
You never know. It's
bike,
a very good friend of mine is Adam Covell, which Owen has been this kid that's the kid years ago, I believe Mini O's won a 4-6 title on a Cobra. This kid's always been one of the top kids. Last few years he's had some injuries. And I think he's probably, I'm not 100% sure, but I think he's probably going to be 16 in January.
Yep.
So because of AMA rules, he can still ride Super Mini. But this kid, I don't think Owen's 5'2" yet. He's a small kid. He just hasn't come into his own yet. He probably will. Mom's not 4'11". She's over 5 feet, and Adam's a tall dude. So hopefully he'll come into it. But he's going to ride Super Minis this year. He got on the right brand of bike for 2022 now. He's going to be riding Motorbikes plus KTMs, where he's always ridden Cowies. So
breaking news.
He is on KTMs now. They're building some. Greg Links is building their motors, factory connection suspension, and awesome. He's just riding. And Adam, he's like, I gotta let him. People are like, he's still on a super mini. I'm like, why would he move up? Yeah. Like, the kid is legit. If this kid stays healthy, he can go out and do something. Like, their plan was mini O's. They had some issues leading up to mini O's because he was barely on the bike this year. But you see the kids and what they did at mini O's, and I look at who did what at mini O's, and I feel to myself, I'm like, Owen code have done something in mini O's this year. If he was ready, but he wasn't quite ready. So it was like, why?
Is Tiger Woods still staying in that class?
I look at him and I feel like he should be. I don't know. I have nothing about that kid. I know nothing. But that's the thing. He's not very big. So I feel like he should. I feel like his parents were almost like the smartest people on the planet with the name. Because, I mean,
unbelievable.
It's like,
really?
Like, it's not Woods, it's Wood, but it's like
the biggest name in golf is back now too, because his boy is playing.
I saw pictures yesterday on Instagram.
It's just marketing 101. It's incredible. Motocross marketing.
But someone said to me did they really name their kid that? And I'm like,
I think it's exactly the same, right?
It most likely, but hey, whatever.
Run it.
It's unbelievable.
So I got to ask you before we kind of wrap this thing. My kid is 4 to 6 motocross, whatever, rider.
Yep.
And I have been told to change brands to a Cobra. Mm-hmm. I've been told by a couple of people that I respect,
Yep.
We ride a KTM.
Yep.
I also talked to, moto dads out there. Mark Waldell, Anderson Waldell's dad.
I know the name.
Anderson Waldell.
I think
has won every championship. He won he beat Jaden Smart Mini O's Supercross for a title on a KTM. He won all the 4 to 6 titles a couple of years ago. Like, that's my question. Is it bike that I'm chasing, or is it rider?
It's tough to say. I mean, obviously, KTM, I'd love to see everybody stay on the KTM. KTM does not sell a bike for that market anymore. We got a Mini SX. We've got the 50 SX. They got rid of the Junior.
They did, yeah.
The Junior probably still wasn't quite what the Cobra was. I feel like, Cobra's obviously the only option, really in that class. But if you're racing, what are you going to do? How are you going to approach this? Because if you're racing in New England, and Loretta's is just kind of like it could happen type thing, you don't need to ride the Cobra. Because in New England, as crazy as it is, you can ride a 12-inch front wheel 50
anywhere
in any class. So therefore, it puts you in this situation where you don't need the Cobra. Also, you have the e-bike. Travis has the e-bike.
Yep.
So you have, at AMA events, you have the 4 to 7 class. Which classes, New England is every organization is going to start getting this, what class does the e-bike, what should it be allowed in? Yeah. I mean.
Well, now they're talking about 2 different e-bike classes.
Right. And that doesn't surprise me at all. I feel like it's going to have to happen. Yeah. Especially once the Cobra comes out, there's going to be a lot more bikes. I mean, there's, you got our 3 that we sell, which are all pretty much the same bike, and then the Cobra, to have a, 4, they should probably have like a...
Now, do you think Suzuki comes out with an e-bike that's kickstart?
I mean, the way things are going, I don't see them putting electric start or, electric motor would probably be even a little more far-fetched for them, but, it's tough to say.
It's tough because you know the feeling. You want to set your kid up for success, right? So, I do have the moto dads that say, why isn't he on a Cobra? Mm-hmm. And for me, it's... We have the KTM. I know the KTM, and I also know TJ. Like, I can put him on different bikes, and he's about the same rider.
And when I watch. Yes, obviously I sell my brands, whatever, but I watch the Cobra. I have friends that we grew up racing with. Like whether it was the 4 to 6 class or the 7 to 8 class that Grantley was racing against, and some guys got caught up in the motor and the suspension, whatever else, but. Obviously I'm an adult, but I watch these kids and the King Cobra or whatever, the FWE, the 7-8 bike, that's a legit bike. The 4-6 bike, to me, looks like an afterthought.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's kind of like it's like they just know they have that market, so therefore they don't really change that bike very much. And it looks very hard to ride power-wise. So kids get on it and they struggle on it. I have a friend, we both know who that is, that put their kid on that bike at Mini O's. He could not ride that bike.
Yeah.
He's ridden a KTM or Husky all year. It's a hard bike. The ergonomics look awkward, everything about it, but obviously it works. But it's the only option. So if you want to be competitive at the national level, 4-6 class, you pretty much have to ride it.
Yeah.
If you're riding locally, well, there's not many being sold locally for that reason, especially in the Northeast, because everybody can ride
the 12-inch.
The 12-inch front wheel seniors.
But see, I'm an underdog story. I love that. I love the fact that Anderson Waldell went out and has won all these titles on a KTM.
Yep.
I love it. I feel like there's almost like a cult thing going on with Cobra at these races.
There is.
I see it. I respect it. You guys have this cool thing going on. You have all the top riders. It's cool. But man, do I love when an underdog comes through and punches through with a win.
Even another name that people could look at as an underdog. So I don't know my Loretta's stats perfectly, but I'm going to guess how many kids in the last, say, 6-7 years have won a Loretta's 57-8 title on a KTM?
Not a lot.
I can name one that's about to become a big dog in professional racing within the next year. Nick Romano.
Nick Romano won on a KTM.
Can't remember if it was 2013 or 2014, but it was a Motorbikes plus KTM.
So you know what's crazy? So he won on a Motorbikes plus KTM.
Yep.
You know what's crazy? Talking about moto dads, I had my media pass on at Mini O's. I was lucky enough to get a Mini O's, media pass through Verb Moto and Win Kern.
Yep.
So I stood in one of the towers and I watched over 10 motos with Nick Romano's dad.
Yep.
Standing right next to him. He has no idea who I am.
Yep.
I don't really know him, but I knew it was Nick Romano's dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the demeanor of him. I loved watching him because I stood up there. It was weird. A lot of the 50 races were right after Nick's races. I loved the demeanor of his dad.
Yep.
I liked standing with him. I had minor conversations with him. Hey, how's like little things. But just standing next to him, I had such a cool feeling. He won Loretta's 7-8 on a Motorbikes plus KTM.
Yep.
Really.
Yep. And it was one of those things where we met Nick at like a main state championship at 207 one year. And going into this, I'll be completely honest, I had heard stories about other kids at the national level, other families that had issues with them.
Yep.
And, so I was tentative, hey, what is this guy a crazy moto dad or what's the deal? I feel that Nick Sr. and I, we still have a pretty good relationship. I don't talk to him much. We text each other back and forth a couple times a year on the phone, whatever. The guy.
A lot of those stories come from jealousy.
It is. And a lot of, it's certain people just, run their mouths, and that's what happens. But this guy, they won on the KTM. Then they got a Team Green ride. He got the Cowies.
Yep.
And, they're getting ridiculous amounts of bikes. You get 8 bikes. You get 10 bikes. You wear these bikes out, call us, we'll give you more. He's on the 85s. And then all of a sudden, he's on the 85s. And they got this, they're a monster. They're pro circuit. They're full on, they're one of the Team Green kids. It's Nick Romano and Ryder D at that age level. And Nick Romano leaves Mini O's. This is probably, it seems like a long time ago, but this kid was probably on 85s 3 years ago.
Yep.
And at Mini O's, 12 to 13 or whatever it was, Mini Senior or whatever, I get a phone call before he even leaves the track from Nick Romano, from Senior.
Senior, yep.
Do you have any 85s in stock? And I'm like, yeah, like for who? And he's like, for me. And I'm like, what? Like, I got to do something. If I have to buy bikes, we need this to happen, whatever. So this guy comes to me. I mean, obviously he makes decent money, but I mean, the guy, he owns dry cleaning business. Like that's what Romano Cleaners, that's their business. That year he bought 5 TC85 Huskies from me. And they went on their own. That monster stuck around, and then, Mitch built his motors, like he still had plenty of support, and that kid went to Loretta's, and he won both titles. Never rode a Super Mini at Loretta's, and never rode a 125. Right
to 250S.
Right to Star Yamaha. And from what I know, Star Yamaha was not the only one that won. Everybody had trying to get their foot in the door to get that kid.
It's so crazy.
And now look at him. Like it's so
crazy.
He didn't fizzle out. He just keeps on. He went to Mini-O's, and I was like, Nick's going to, like you watch him and like, but I mean, this year he was dominant.
Unreal.
It didn't matter where he started. He came through, and that kid is an animal.
The rumor was going into it that Towers was going to have something for him, but it just didn't. It didn't come to fruition for Towers.
And I'm just laughing because John from the shop just rolled by with his thumb up. Towers, he was impressive, and he was kind of up and down at Mini-O's, but for not being on that bike that long, he was really good. But Nick Romano,
that's cool.
That kid's the real deal.
That's a cool story.
And his dad's the real deal. He's a great guy. He's,
won a 50 title with a Motorbikes Plus logo. On a KTM.
On the podium. Motorbikes Plus, a swing arm, big, awesome. Great dude and just awesome guy. And I wish the best for them, no matter what brand they're riding. So,
well, look, we've been talking for almost 2 hours. Yeah. So let's kind of wrap this thing up. Is there anything that you had in mind coming into this that you want to say? I mean, obviously, we've done okay. Like it's been an awesome. We've gotten an awesome reaction from the industry from the first episode. So going into the second episode, we have people talking about us and reaching out and listening. Anything that you thought that you'd want to say?
I mean, who am I? But I just want to tell people the whole moto dad thing. We're all moto dads. We all love our kids. Are we all hard on them once in a while? Yes, no. Some will say no, but it's a lot of money you're putting out there.
Yeah.
You're spending a lot of money. It's an expensive sport. I mean, a kid's e-bike is $5,200, $5,300. It's it's a crazy world. It's not buying hockey equipment, but then again, hockey dads are just as crazy. But, if your kid, if you have to tell your kid to go riding, I don't want to ride today, I don't want to ride today, you keep pushing it and keep pushing it, your kid's going to be done racing before they even reach 18. That's how it's going to go. People can tell me I'm wrong. They can tell me I'm right. But I have some friends that had some ridiculous talent growing up. Some kids that most people would have never even heard of that were kids at Loretta's getting top fives every year. Mini-O's, top fives. And by the time these kids were 16, 17 years old, they were like, I'm going to college. I'm done. I'm over it. I don't want to do this anymore. And that's when kids are just coming into their own. The whole 16-year-old turning pro, that's a dream. There's one out of every, you got your Jet Lawrence. Most kids aren't ready till probably 18, 19, 20 years old, and let them do their thing, let them get stronger, figure it out, and go from there. It's just, but what do I know?
We're all learning.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all learning,
it is.
And all we can do is share the things that we've learned. Man, thank you so much for coming on.
For sure.
Cheers.
For sure.
We don't have sponsors on the show for a reason.
Yep.
Just want to get the message out there. If you like the show, share it. Send it to some other moto dads, maybe moto moms. We love moto moms.
Moto moms are great.
Yeah. Grant's moto mom isn't allowed at the track because Grantley gets hurt. But we love moto moms. We love you. Getting people into the sport. This is a really cool sport. So Whether
it's the best sport. It's my life.
Whether it's trail riding, dirt bikes, like just having fun, riding in fields, it's an amazing sport.
I mean, honestly, like that's one thing I told myself I was going to talk about is you want your kid to be successful in this sport or be the best they can be. If you're a moto kid, don't just ride moto.
Yeah.
Ride in the woods.
Yep.
Go if you're in New England, go do some J days, do some other this stuff because it's diversity. These kids need to learn how to deal with diversity. You know, races get canceled when it's muddy now. Whereas, you know, you go to a J day, nothing is getting canceled. You're riding through it. You figure it out. It's going to make them tougher. It's going to make them just figure out what they need to do. And
some of the most nerve-wracking days I ever had was going trail riding with my dad.
Yep.
Learning how to, you know, because some of the guys that we trail rode with, they would tell you before the ride, if I look back and I don't see you, that's on you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's on you.
Yep.
You're on your own out here in the woods.
Yep.
So and you survived those things,
right.
Like being on your own in the woods, like
Yep.
your bike dies in the woods and you're alone for 20 minutes, like figuring out what to do.
Oh, yeah.
Life is going to be a cakewalk compared to that stuff.
Yep, exactly.
All right, man.
Awesome.
Thank you
All right,
very
buddy.
much.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.